Welcome to episode 158 of the Microsoft Cloud IT Pro podcast, recorded live December 27, 2019. This is a show about Office 365 and Azure from the perspective of IT pros and end users, where we discuss a topic or recent news and how it relates to you. In this episode, we discuss an important change coming at the end of February 2020 involving baseline security policies, security defaults, and conditional access policies in Azure AD, and how and why you need to prepare for this change.
I don't have enough coffee for this.
I am all set.
Well, good for you.
And I have a cup of coffee here.
Show off.
My second cup. Anyways, Merry Christmas. Welcome back from Merry Christmas.
And a Happy New Year. And that's all the singing you'll ever get out of me.
Tidings we bring. Okay. Should we turn this into a singing podcast?
No, we should not.
Okay. So we have a topic for today that I discovered and we thought would be interesting to talk about.
Yes.
That is not Christmas related or Christmas present related, because we already spent 30 minutes talking about Christmas presents before we recorded.
We'll see.
Or how to spend money.
Let's let the airing of the grievances begin. Welcome to Festivus.
Oh my. Yes. As IT professionals in the cloud era, sometimes it feels like we don't speak the same language as the rest of the organization. So when stakeholders from finance or other departments start asking about a specific project or team's Azure costs, they don't always realize how much work is involved in obtaining that information, sifting through cluttered CSVs and a complex mess of metadata in order to manually create custom views and reports. It's a real headache. On top of helping you understand and reduce your organization's overall Azure spend, ShareGate Overcast lets you group resources into meaningful cost hubs and map them to real-world business scenarios. This way, you can track costs in the way that makes most sense with your corporate structure, whether it's by product, business unit, team, or otherwise. It's a flexible, intuitive, and business-friendly way of tracking Azure infrastructure costs, and it's only available in ShareGate Overcast. Find out more on sharegate.com/ITPro. All right, so for our topic today, a change. Did you know there's changes every once in a while to Office 365?
Sometimes there are changes.
And some of them are even a little odd and confusing and can cause people headaches.
This is a thing that does happen.
All right, and we have one of such today, and I recently discovered this in a roundabout way. Somehow I missed the news for this. Was this, you know what? I should look at the date on that one article. This might have been Ignite News. No, this was post-Ignite News. This was December 2019 news. But I came across this because I'm a Microsoft partner. And in the partner portal for a while now, they have been essentially saying that partners have to have certain safeguards enabled now, because as a partner, you can get set up as like a delegated admin, which means your account has delegated permissions into your client's account so you can help them administer their environment. And starting November 18 of 2019, so this was actually starting like a month and a half ago now, certain security safeguards had to be enabled on these partner tenants or in your partner account for some of your admins, so that to help essentially protect your clients. And one of these was MFA, which led me to conditional access policies and these baseline security policies that have been in preview now. I don't even know when these baseline security policies started.
They've been out there a while. We talked about them in the way back when they first came out.
We did. So if we talked about these and we told you to go turn all these baseline security policies on, and you did that, there is a change coming actually pretty quickly now. So this announcement came out in December 2019. Come February of 2020, so you got about 2 months, there is a replacement of these baseline policies with a new feature called security defaults, which... Did you actually turn this on in a tenant yet? Did you find one? Did you risk it?
I think I might have to spin up a new tenant to try this one.
Okay.
I'm absolutely willing to do it.
See, and I need to go find a tenant because we really should turn this on. But essentially what this announcement says is come end of February, and originally they did have a date in one of these articles. I can't find it now, but they still hint at February. They are essentially saying that they are going to delete, disable, remove all of these baseline security policies, which the baseline policies essentially created these free conditional access policies in your Azure AD environment. Those are just going to be deleted come February, and you're either going to have to turn on this new baseline security, or you're going to have to go, essentially, it sounds like recreate conditional access policies. So the way this affects partners is if you were using baseline security to meet some of these requirements for partners, come February, these baseline security policies may just disappear, and you're going to have to go make that change from your baseline policies to either setting up your own conditional access policies or enabling these security defaults. And there's a few things to think about here that I found as I've started playing with this. And again, I have not enabled security defaults yet in my tenant, and we were going to go try to find one and haven't. So maybe we'll come back with a future update on how that actually affects a tenant when you enable it.
Oh, what are you talking about? I'm going to do it right now.
Okay. Scott's doing it right now while I'm talking, so we can fill you in. But that's the change that's coming, and it's not an easy one to test or to kind of do ahead of time based on what I found, because I went in and saw this and I was like, okay, great. I can go enable security defaults so that when these baseline policies get disabled or removed, whatever those happen, the articles imply that they're just going to get deleted and removed from all of the tenants, then I'll be covered. So I go in, find these security defaults, which if you navigate to Azure AD, they're not under your conditional access. They are actually under your, I lost my window. It's under Azure AD, under your properties. And then there's a little link down at the very bottom of your directory properties in Azure AD for managed security defaults. And it's just a toggle switch, yes or no. So I went in, opened up my environment. It's like, sure, let's just go toggle this to yes because I like to live dangerously. And I got a notification that says, it looks like you have custom conditional access and classic policies enabled. Enabling these conditional access policies prevents you from enabling security defaults.
Correct. So when you go into your tenant, do you have any of the baseline policies on right now?
So I have all 4 of them on in my tenant.
Gotcha. So when you turn it on, because I went and did it just for you, because I like you that much.
I appreciate it.
So I couldn't have any of the baseline policies enabled. And so I went and turned them all to off. So there's 4 baseline policies. So you just 1, 2, 3, 4, turn those all off. And then I was able to go turn on security defaults. When I turned on security defaults, it came, and now I go into conditional access. Now there's a new little banner under conditional access under my policies. And it's just one of the little info banners with little I. And it says baseline protection policies are a legacy experience, which is being deprecated. All baseline protection policies have been removed from your tenant because you are already using security defaults to protect your organization.
Got it. So it did just delete all 4 of those baseline policies.
Yep. Just straight up deleted them. But custom ones are still there, and I can still create custom ones and all that. Like I can go and add a new policy. That's not a problem.
And I found that banner, that date is actually shown in a banner in conditional access. It's not in the articles, where it says baseline protection policies are a legacy experience, which is being deprecated. All baseline protection policies will be removed on February 29th, 2020. If you're looking to enable a security policy for your organization, we recommend enabling security defaults or configuring conditional access policies. But so now what would be really interesting to test out, and that I don't see this in the documentation does. Okay, so here's the documentation on everything that security defaults does. So it goes in and it looks like it enables that multi-factor authentication, which was one of those baseline policies where 9 of the Azure AD administrator roles will be required to perform that MFA. It goes in and protects all your users. Just sets up a stronger form of authentication for everyone. It looks like it enables MFA for all users. It blocks your legacy authentication, and it has some protection of privileged actions in there. So it does some stuff with notifications through the mobile app, but doesn't necessarily use text messaging to phone, call to phone. So there's a whole list here of all the security defaults that are enabled. It looks like, by and large, it is going to take care of all of those same security settings that were in the baseline policies. It's just now through this security defaults that you don't really have any access to change or customize. They just get applied.
It's a little bit more than that. So some of those are pretty straightforward, right? We're enabling MFA. Now, that one's a weird one because when you enable security defaults, all users in your tenant must register for MFA within 14 days. Now, that may or may not be okay for you, depending on how you deploy things. Like, I know there are still some things that exist out there in Azure, Office 365 land, whatever it happens to be, where you have maybe an external process, say it runs in PowerShell or something like that, and you haven't been able to transition it over to a service principal yet. So it doesn't support client token, client secret, kind of more like an OpenID Connect authentication flow and OAuth authorizations. And it just needs something like a username and password. Well, now, because it's all users, well, guess what? All means all. So MFA, all the things, that could potentially break external processes or existing things out there. I think that one's potentially manageable, maybe kind of, sort of, but you certainly do have to think about it because now it's just one switch or kind of one little checkbox, just a yes, no, that all of a sudden does all these things. There's no more granularity to say, well, these users get MFA, but I have this service account over here. It's not a service principal. It's an account that I consider to be privileged. I've protected it in other ways. Maybe I have a conditional access policy wrapped around it that only allows this account to log in from a known IP, something like that, something else that helps it out along the way. But all is all. So that one's kind of rough. I think that one's really rough.
I would agree because there's no way to exclude certain users, or like you said, with those baseline ones, you could tweak some of those too. So maybe you require MFA for admins, but you set up some type of exclusion for certain IP addresses, which technically then, and maybe this is why they're doing that, is you could take those baseline policies, tweak them for your needs, which before, I'm assuming once you start tweaking baseline policies, technically you're supposed to buy Azure AD premium licenses that cover conditional access. This is kind of a way to enable all those security defaults without allowing people the ability to customize those conditional access policies that you're supposed to pay for. Is maybe Microsoft's rationale for doing this is just purely a licensing thing?
It's certainly a way to put everybody in the same security posture. And it's called out that way as a feature that everyone should have. But I think it just changes things along the way. So let's take the MFA thing and kind of break it down a little bit further. So, okay, you turn security defaults on. So now all your users are subject to MFA. And you say, well, this isn't a problem for me because all of my users already do MFA, right?
Yep.
But maybe they do MFA based on the authentication methods that you had configured in your MFA service. So you had said, I allow verification codes from the mobile app, or maybe use like hardware tokens, right? Maybe you use like an RSA token or like an oath token, just something that's compatible. Well, guess what? Now that doesn't work anymore because the only authentication method that is viable and allowed or available, I guess, viable, available, allowed, all the things when you turn on security defaults is notification through the mobile app. So like in that tenant where I turned it on, as soon as I went in to the MFA settings for the tenant, I can't even get into the MFA settings anymore because I was configured until I configure the mobile app. Because I was only configured for phone number kind of by default as an authentication method. So if you haven't rolled out the mobile app for all of your users, or you're using another type of hardware token that is not the Microsoft mobile app and you're using something else, security defaults may not be an option for you.
And there's no way to really expand that out other than to now turn off security defaults.
Correct.
And configure
each and every little thing.
Each and every little thing of MFA, which then does things like no longer blocking legacy auth or some of those extra things in your security defaults that previously you had more control over because they were 4 different baseline policies. So now it's either everything is on or everything is off. And if you want somewhere in the middle, you're going to have to go buy Azure AD P1 in order to do conditional access policies.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
As soon as you enable a conditional access policy, like a custom conditional access policy, you will now require the licensing for that.
Yep. When it comes to email, Outlook and Office 365 are fantastic, but sometimes there are things you'd like to do that aren't implemented. Sperry Software creates Outlook add-ins and Office 365 services that fill in these gaps. For instance, there are Outlook add-ins to automatically print emails and or attachments, save emails to PDF, send out recurring emails, or how about a warning when you're going to do a reply to all instead of a normal reply? Find these and many more email productivity solutions. Get started today by visiting www.sperrysoftware.com/cloudit. So what this also means too is like for my tenant, so I was using all these baseline policies. I am not going to go turn on security defaults because I did make some minor tweaks to my baseline policies. I also have some other conditional access policies that were not baseline policies, and those will block me from turning on security defaults. So sometime before February 29, I have 2 months, I have to go essentially recreate all of these baseline policies from scratch for my tenant, so that when these baseline policies get deleted or get removed or get disabled, I'm still covered. And Microsoft does provide some guidance. So they also talk about here is use those security defaults or use what they call the common conditional access policies. These are not like those security defaults where they're pre-templated and you can go say, turn on this common policy for MFA for administrators and turn on this common policy to block legacy authentication. They essentially give you a link that says, here's all of the common conditional policies. And there's, it looks like 8 of them there. And some of them, they do say, hey, this one, it's the risk-based conditional access is going to require Azure AD P2. But if you go look at these common conditional access policies, they give you the step-by-step to walk through and hand configure these in terms of go to Azure AD Security, Conditional Access, create a new policy, select users and groups, select include, select exclude, go click these checkboxes, click those checkboxes, click grant this, deny that, done, create, enable. So what it does mean is that as admins, you're going to have to, if you're using conditional access or if you're relying on those baseline security policies and this default security isn't going to work for you, sometime in the next 2 months, you're going to have to go in and actually recreate a whole bunch of conditional access policies to take the place of those baseline policies once they're essentially deleted from your tenant.
That might be wrong, actually. Hold on. Give me just a second here. Cloud apps or actions, all cloud apps. This is going to make for some compelling stuff. Don't worry about the conditions. I just want it all.
So do you see common conditions or common policies?
When I go to create a new policy, it pops up a little box and it says, it looks like you're about to manage your organization's security configurations. That's great! Exclamation mark. You must first disable security defaults before enabling a conditional access policy.
Which that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because you can't enable security defaults if you have custom ones.
Right. But now you can't do both. Like even if there's something that you wanted to do in conditional access that didn't override something that was in a security default, they still don't want you to do it. It's like all or nothing. Either you turn security defaults on and you don't use conditional access anymore, which conditional access can be used for a heck of a lot more than
right.
Think about like, I don't want to allow file downloads in SharePoint. That has nothing to do with MFA for my users or my administrators.
Correct. Then as soon as you turn that on, you're going to create a conditional access policy, which means security defaults are going to be turned off, and you're going to have to manually go in and create those common policies in your conditional access.
Yeah. So you've got to figure out where you want to manage your posture and what that looks like for you, which some of this stuff makes total sense. Like if all I ever did was use Azure AD, and I was an MSP partner that actually didn't leverage any internal Microsoft workloads, and I didn't take advantage of any of my IUR or anything like that, and all I did was manage things for other customers, like, okay, that makes sense. But as soon as you start to turn on some of those external workloads that rely on Azure Active Directory as not only an identity provider, but also a core security construct and kind of part of the authentication and authorization flow, then it starts to break things in some weird, interesting ways. Like this just has so many downstream impacts, right? Like so the service account thing kills me because now you can't even use app passwords anymore because app passwords aren't available as a notification through the mobile app.
Right. Well, aren't app passwords, don't they still leverage legacy auth too? Weren't app password? I mean, they're essentially a backdoor around.
But you used to have a way to enable app passwords just inside conditional access. So that was like your per user MFA with legacy authentication scenarios. But yeah, like sometimes you potentially do need those things. I think it's going to be, this is a rough transition, right? Like you can't just click this button and hope it's going to work. You actually have to know the ins and outs of how all this stuff flows and what it does and how it's going to impact you. And there's a lot of impacts here.
And the other thing is I think some of these baseline policies, they were starting to be enabled by default, weren't they?
They were, yeah.
Baseline policies. So come February 29, all of a sudden users may find their tenants no longer secured in the way they thought they were because they were getting these extra security from baseline policies. And from all the documentation, it doesn't appear that on February 29th, these baseline policies are going to be deleted and security defaults are going to get enabled by default. These baseline policies are just going to get deleted and your tenant's going to be left with possibly some security vulnerabilities that these policies were putting in place for you, is my understanding.
Oh, it's going to be some good times. Baseline policies also covered less accounts than, or less privileged roles than the security defaults did. So like baseline policies covered global admin, SharePoint Exchange, conditional access admins, and security admins. And security defaults covers all those. It also adds help desk admins and password admins, billing admins, user admins, and authentication admins. So even users that potentially had never been onboarded into baseline policy are all of a sudden going to have some new impacts along the way. Like if they're not registered for MFA.
Assuming you're enabling the security defaults, I would anticipate a lot of people that are, well...
Would you?
No, I guess not.
Go ahead and say that one out loud.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that. Because baseline policies were enabled by default, I bet there's a lot of people that are using baseline policies that don't even realize they're using baseline policies. And again, this one just kind of slipped out. I kind of stumbled across this accidentally. I just assumed baseline policies were going to roll out a preview at some point in time. I did not anticipate these being deprecated and deleted with only 2 months' notice, and users having to make this transition of going in and enabling those security defaults. And like you said, all the additional things that would flow down from that, or going in and recreating a whole bunch of these conditional access policies from scratch to replace those baseline policies once they get deleted.
Yes. Yeah, it's can of worms. Excellent.
Yes. And especially for one that just kind of snuck out there. Because have you seen any blog posts about this or anything?
I did not catch this one, and that just might be me not paying attention to things. But no, I did not catch that baseline policies were going away and that they were being replaced with these new things. Because even all the guidance for partners and things, I mean, I get the same emails you do, right, about maintaining partnership and especially as a CSP needing some of the other things that come in there. And nothing in there calls out, hey, we've got security defaults coming, conditional access is changing or anything else. You just kind of got to like roll with it and hope it works. So I think for a lot of partners, like if you don't have that premium licensing, this stuff makes total sense and you're just going to have to learn to live with the limitations.
Yep. Everyone on your team is unique. So is SkillMeUp.com. Only SkillMeUp provides the bridge from fundamentals to certification paths to advanced skills to accelerate digital transformation with one subscription and 5 ways to learn. Start your free pilot today and supercharge your IT and Microsoft Azure skills by visiting skillmeup.com/pilot or click the link in the show notes below. So I love this. Not to rip on Microsoft, but this is classic scenarios you see. So did you look at the open issues underneath what are security defaults?
Break glass accounts?
Yes. So somebody actually opened an issue and said, what about excluding break glass accounts if you enable security defaults? This is a best practice recommended by Microsoft.
Yeah.
Which it is. We talked about that on one of our other shows. Microsoft responded and said, thanks for your feedback. Can you elaborate on what you mean by break glass accounts?
Yeah.
I mean, this is stuff that Microsoft should be thinking about when they have it in their documentation. We as end users should not have to explain to Microsoft, 1, what break glass accounts are that they put in their own documentation, and 2, why they should provide functionality to adhere to their own best practices when they roll out functionality like this. Because it is this, like you said, security defaults. Now MFA is on for everybody. You no longer have break glass accounts, so that, like, let's go back to that scenario when they did have those. They had a couple times, and we talked about it, when they had MFA issues. And if you did not have a user excluded from MFA, you could not get into your tenant. If you have security defaults enabled and something happens with MFA, you are essentially going to be locked out of your tenant until MFA service is restored.
Yeah. Yes, this is, oof.
Yeah. Thus, I figured this would be an interesting topic for today. And something everybody should be aware of. I'm trying to picture your face right now. I can see you just kind of like rolling your eyes and shaking your head and beating it on the table.
I am, as I'm typing up the same issue that you just talked about there. We're like, hey, MFA sometimes dies.
Yeah. So all that being said, anybody that listens to this podcast that has an Office 365 account needs to go in and pay attention to the security defaults and what is going on with the rollout of that, as well as if you do have those existing baseline policies enabled that are securing your environment, or if you're going to do conditional access. And in the next 2 months, really go in and figure out your stance on these security defaults, your conditional access, if you are using the baseline policies, how you're going to replace them, and possibly getting a bunch of information out to your end users on changes that they are going to see if you plan to enable security defaults when this all rolls out here in 2 months.
Yeah, good luck training everybody on even the mobile app and getting that rolled out the right way and saying like, okay, here's how you're going to do one-time pins. And the thing that's annoying there is in the mobile app piece, it is specifically notification through the mobile app.
You can't even do text message.
But outside of that, like there are tons of third-party clients. Like maybe you didn't want to use the Microsoft mobile app to do one-time pin generation, because now you can't even do one-time pin. It has to be the notification in response to the notification. So you can't use LastPass, you can't use Dashlane, you can't use 1Password or whatever your thing was. You can't use your oath tokens, any of that. It has to be that app. So now there's like even just more little things that break along the way. Like SMS might not be the most secure thing, but there's sometimes, like if you're in some parts of the world, SMS might be the thing you actually want because data connectivity is not there. So you can't actually receive a push notification.
Right, because there are times when you have that cell phone signal, but you have no data connection, and you can get that text message with the code in it. But like you said, you'll never get that push notification. Yeah. Go buy Azure AD P1 and stand up conditional access policies. Don't mess with security defaults. And if you need to purchase licenses, contact me. Or if you need help with this, contact me, because now I'm just going to go into self-promotion mode now that we're essentially done. And we can go cry.
So I'll just take a bath in my tears.
All right. Well, with that, should we wrap up this rather sad episode before either of us start crying on air? We've sung on air. We might as well start crying.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you, Scott. Interesting discussion today, and go enjoy your Christmas presents.
I will do my best. Thanks, Ben.
All right. We'll talk to you later. If you enjoyed the podcast, go leave us a 5-star rating in iTunes. It helps to get the word out so more IT pros can learn about Office 365 and Azure. If you have any questions you want us to address on the show or feedback about the show, feel free to reach out via our website, Twitter, or Facebook. Thanks again for listening, and have a great day.